Translator, Redditor, Henyi. If a clan dared to take a divine beast as its crest or ancestral emblem, then that clan must unquestionably possess terrifying strength. Otherwise, how could they possibly be worthy of bearing the symbol of a divine beast? This was no different from some nameless martial artist who lacked the strength, yet dared proclaim himself Sword Emperor or Saber King. Such arrogance would certainly earn him a brutal beating. Within the martial world, titles and emblems were matters treated with utmost solemnity, and no one was permitted to toy with them carelessly. On the side of the five great sects, that shattering void tier elite suddenly leapt atop the city walls. Standing tall against the wind, he called out in a booming voice, "General of the false Purple Moon Empire, come out and meet this lord." Hey! A mere warrior at the third layer of the shattering void tier dares behave so arrogantly before this king. Accompanied by a long burst of laughter that rolled across the battlefield like thunder, a man clad in full armor appeared in the distance. Beneath him was an extraordinarily majestic beast whose hooves burned with twisting flames, radiating a divine and imposing presence. Ling Han's gaze landed upon that beast, and astonishment immediately appeared in his eyes. For that creature was none other than the Nine Flames Heaven-treading beast, a beast of the 10th tier. A 10th tier beast stood on equal footing with shattering void tier elites. Moreover, divine beasts possessed bodies far superior to those of humans, their physiques naturally cultivating physical arts alongside their growth. In a battle within the same tier, beasts often held a greater chance of victory. Yet such a terrifying existence had now become the mount of a human elite. This sight was simply astonishing. The Nine Flames Heaven-treading beast advanced step by step. Its pace was not swift, yet the aura it emitted was incomparably terrifying. Everyone present felt their chests tighten as if an invisible hand were squeezing their hearts to the point of bursting. If even the mount possessed such dreadful power, then what about the master riding upon it? The man wore gleaming silver mail across his body, a silver helmet upon his head. His face remained uncovered, revealing firm and rugged features filled with hale and hearty lines. His expression was calm and steady, as though even if the heavens themselves collapsed, he would still stand firm and hold them up. "Who are you?" the shattering void tier elite from the five great sects shouted, his voice carrying a trace of shock at the overwhelming presence of the newcomer. "Purple Moon Empire's heavenly astral king, Nalan Tianhuang," the rider replied in a mild voice. Though his tone was gentle, his words resounded clearly within the minds of everyone present, echoing endlessly as if carried upon the winds of heaven and earth. The shattering void tier elite from the five great sects snorted coldly and declared, "How outrageous! To dare establish a nation upon these vast lands is nothing less than defying the heavens." "Hey, can you represent heaven and earth?" Nalan Tianhuang replied with scorn. "This lord is Zhang Xiaolin. Today, I stand here representing the vast lands themselves to deliver you an ultimatum. Immediately forsake darkness for light and submit, and perhaps a slim chance of survival will remain. Otherwise, you will only be courting your own ruin." The shattering void tier elite of the five great sects shouted loudly. "Huh? You truly know nothing!" Nalan Tianhuang sneered. "When this lord shook the world with my might, your great ancestors were still somewhere drinking milk, and yet you dare act impudently before this king." Such arrogant words. Zhang Xiaoling was clearly unable to restrain his anger, yet he knew nothing of the true depths of Nalan Tianhuang's strength. Thus he dared not rashly provoke a direct clash. He merely snorted coldly and said, "An arrogant man will eventually invite his own death." "Ha ha! This lord shall deploy the army here and launch the assault upon the city in 3 days." Nalan Tianhuang declared with a clear and resonant voice that rumbled across the battlefield like thunder. "At that time, those who lay down their weapons and kneel in surrender shall be spared." "In your dreams," Zhang Xianling replied coldly. As the two great shattering void tier elites exchanged words, none of the others present possessed the qualifications to interrupt. Once their exchange ended, both sides naturally ceased speaking. A war of words was itself a psychological assault, a contest of imposing aura that could sway morale. Naturally, neither side was willing to appear weaker in bearing. Fatso Ma's subordinates are truly an assembly of the talented! Ling Han exclaimed inwardly in shock. Before, he had merely suspected such things, but now that he witnessed it with his own eyes, he finally dared confirm that the Purple Moon Empire truly possessed shattering void tier elites. Moreover, Nalan Tianhuang was certainly no ordinary shattering void tier elite. Though Ling Han could not discern his precise cultivation or measure his true strength, the mere fact that he rode upon a 10th tier beast already explained everything. Ling Han gazed into the distance and saw the army of the Purple Moon Empire arranged in neat battle formations. 100,000 soldiers formed a massive square, and each square stood perfectly aligned. No one leaned even slightly out of place. Even when Zhang Xianlin had earlier released his shattering void tier aura, the army had not trembled in the slightest. Their discipline was frighteningly precise. Yet on this side, under the overwhelming presence of Nalan Tianhuang, many people had already begun shivering, their fighting spirit cut in half. Before the battle had even begun, half the war was already lost. How truly strange. Fatso Ma, a figure who appeared no more than a clown, could actually command such a terrifying subordinate. And this was merely one of the 3 great armies. The generals leading the other 2 armies were likely no weaker. No wonder he dared establish a nation and even possessed the ambition of opening the skies. His foundations were indeed shockingly deep. Accordingly, should not Ma Duobao, who bore the immense responsibility of opening the skies, be even more powerful? Otherwise, without a sufficiently sturdy physique, how could he possibly endure the tremendous augmentation granted by the power of a nation? As expected, people truly should not be judged by their appearance. Who exactly was Ma Duobao? Ling Han found himself growing increasingly curious. If one could not understand a person directly, one could observe those who surrounded him. Like attracts like. If someone could attract an elite such as Nalan Tianhuang, how could Ma Duobao possibly be ordinary? The great army of the Purple Moon Empire soon began constructing its encampment, calmly preparing for the battle that would arrive in 3 days. Meanwhile, the 5 great sects convened an emergency council. The central debate of the conference was whether they should launch a surprise attack tonight, tomorrow night, or the night after, hoping to catch the enemy unprepared. In warfare, nothing is too deceitful. This lord believes we should strike tonight with a surprise attack. Their army has been marching without rest, and tonight must surely be the moment when they are most relaxed. One big shot suggested. Anyone able to attend this council was naturally an important figure. Ling Han was fortunate enough to participate as well, because he was a heaven-grade alchemist. Such a status allowed him to stand on equal footing with heaven-tier elites, and even shattering void tier experts would grant him a measure of respect. Yet Ling Han displayed none of the dignity expected of a heaven-grade alchemist. Hu Niu sat happily upon his lap, while the 2 of them cracked sunflower seeds together, utterly unconcerned with the gravity of this extremely serious military conference. No, no, no. The other side intentionally declared a period of 3 days. Most likely, they already anticipated that we might launch a surprise attack during these days. They must certainly have traps prepared, and we cannot fall into them. Someone objected. They have marched a long distance and must be exhausted. How could they possibly have time to prepare traps? This lord insists that this is our best opportunity to strike. I firmly object. The participants of the conference quickly divided into 3 factions. One faction advocated launching an active attack, while another insisted on defending the city stubbornly. After all, they had already arranged numerous formations within the city. Why not allow the enemy to charge into them? The final faction remained neutral, reserving their opinions. Of course, neutral was merely a polite way of putting it. They simply had no firm view of their own. In the end, Zhang Xiaolin made the decision to dispatch an elite unit during the night to carry out a probing sneak attack and test the quality of Nalan Tianhuang's army. Many people volunteered eagerly to participate in this operation. However, Ling Han decisively refused. What a joke! He had no intention of risking his life for the 5 great sects. Furthermore, Nalan Tianhuang's strength was unfathomable, and his army stood in such imposing formation that it was clearly a battle-hardened, iron-blooded force. To launch a sneak attack against such an army? That would be more like seeking death. Not only did he refuse to participate himself, he also warned the Rain Emperor and the others not to involve themselves in the operation. It would be far wiser to wait and observe the situation when the great battle arrived 3 days later. Editor, Henyi. In the depths of night, beneath the quiet command of Zhang Xiaolin, a raiding force of more than 300 cultivators slipped forth like shadows in the dark, advancing silently toward Nalan, Tianhuang's encampment with slaughter in their hearts. Though the number of warriors in this squad was not great, their cultivation foundations were formidable. Every single one stood within the spiritual infant tier, and among them were more than 10 mighty experts of the deity transformation tier and heaven tier. Leading them was even a supreme, shattering void tier master. Such a force was terrifyingly powerful, a blade sharp enough to shatter any sect beneath the heavens save for the 5 great ancient sects themselves. No matter how the others speculated, even if Nalan Tianhuang had long been on guard, facing such an overwhelming strike force meant that his army would certainly suffer grievous losses. Even in the worst case, the raiding squad should still have been able to withdraw intact. Yet when the pale light of dawn rose over the horizon, Zhang Xiaolin returned to the city in utter disarray, accompanied by only 2 heaven-tier elites. Their faces were ashen, their eyes hollow, as though the marrow of their bones had been chilled by unspeakable terror. Not a single word escaped their lips. Each of them silently retreated to their own quarters. Yet before half a day had passed, a military order thundered through the ranks. Everyone was to withdraw immediately. What kind of situation was this? They had merely launched a stealth raid, and now they were fleeing? However, the command had come from a shattering void tier leader. Who dared to question it? Who dared to resist? In an instant, the army of 10,000 abandoned the city and retreated toward the lands beyond the front lines. Along the road of retreat, the truth behind the events of the previous night gradually surfaced. One of the 2 surviving heaven-tier elites had confided the matter to his descendant. Unfortunately, this descendant was not a man capable of keeping his mouth shut. One person told 10 people. 10 people told 100 people. And soon the entire army knew the truth. The moment the raiding squad had entered the enemy's camp the night before, they had fallen directly into an ambush. Nalan Tianhuang had long dispatched troops to lie in wait. What had been thought to be a surprise attack was instead a carefully prepared battlefield meant to trap them. Zhang Xiaolin had sent more than 300 spiritual infant tier elites into the fray, along with a shattering void tier commander. In comparison, Nalan Tianhuang's side had deployed a formation of 10,000 soldiers, yet their individual cultivation seemed unimpressive. The strongest among them had only reached the spiritual pedestal tier. Most of the soldiers were merely warriors of the spiritual ocean tier. As for Nalan Tianhuang himself, he had not even appeared to provide support. Only a 10th tier demonic beast had taken the field. No matter how one looked at it, Zhang Xiaolin's side should have possessed absolute dominance. Leaving aside that beast, any random spiritual infant tier expert could have swept through the entire 10,000-man formation as easily as turning one's palm. Yet once battle truly began, events unfolded in a manner no one could have predicted. The 10,000-man formation erupted with terrifying combat strength, as though every soldier had been possessed by some mysterious stimulant. Their power surged like a raging tide, effortlessly crushing the elite raiding force. At the same time, Zhang Xiaolin himself was intercepted by the demonic beast, and in that clash, he actually fell into a disadvantage. The battle lasted less than half a day, yet in that short span of time, the raiding force was nearly annihilated. Seeing that the situation had already spiraled beyond recovery, Zhang Xiaolin barely managed to rescue 2 heaven-tier elites and flee back to the city. Afterward, the surviving heaven-tier expert analyzed the battle and proposed a chilling theory. The enemy's 10,000-man unit had employed some ancient formation that merged the strength of all its soldiers together, amplifying their combined might to a level capable of rivaling heaven-tier experts. This conclusion shocked him to the core, because The opposing side possessed 99 more such 10,000-man formations. Too terrifying. This was an unstoppable torrent of force sweeping across the land. Who under heaven could possibly stand against it? Thus, retreat became the only option. Continuing to fight would have been nothing more than courting death. When Ling Han heard this news, he could not help but nod silently within his heart. No wonder Ma Duobao had been so confident. So it turned out that he had mastered a powerful ancient battle array, commanding armies through formation like a legion of kings. Moreover, they possessed the blessing of national fortune. That power was likely the key that allowed the formation to coalesce. The strength of 10,000 soldiers fused into a single entity. Even if each individual warrior was merely at the spiritual infant tier or spiritual pedestal tier, once their strength was combined, it became terrifying beyond measure. With the addition of the nation's blessing, and perhaps even drawing upon a portion of Na Lan Tianhuang's own power, they possessed might capable of sweeping aside heaven-tier experts. And this was merely the power of 10,000 soldiers. What if the army numbered 100,000? What if it reached 1,000,000? If the power of hundreds of millions of people could be gathered into one unified force, might it even split the heavens themselves? To split the heavens, one first had to found a nation. Ling Han voiced none of these thoughts aloud. He simply retreated along with the others. Yet the moment their forces withdrew from the city, Na Lan Tianhuang launched an immediate siege. With a shattering void-tier expert overseeing the battlefield, who could possibly block their advance? The city soon fell. Anyone who turned back could see that the banner atop the city walls had already been replaced by the flag of the Purple Moon Empire. It signified that this rising empire had seized yet another territory. Its expansion could no longer be halted. Within merely an hour, Na Lan Tianhuang's army set out once again, marching toward the next city. Communication stones revealed that the two other armies advancing along different routes had encountered no resistance whatsoever. Before such a crushing offensive, the coalition army of the 5 great sects resembled nothing more than a mantis attempting to halt a chariot. How could they possibly block such a surging tide engulfing the lands? The fate of the other 2 coalition armies was even more tragic. They had launched full-scale surprise attacks, hoping to seize the opportunity before their opponents had fully stabilized their foothold and destroy them in a single decisive strike. In the end, however, almost none of the soldiers from those 10,000-man formations survived. In short, the coalition army assembled by the 5 great ancient sects had become a complete joke. They had not even managed to slow the advance of the Purple Moon Empire. When this news spread across the world, the entire realm was shaken. At the beginning, who had not mocked the Purple Moon Empire as a mere farce? Yet now, after 3 punitive expeditions had been utterly crushed, the empire's reputation soared overnight. Without question, it had become the strongest force beneath the heavens aside from the 5 great sects themselves. A truly terrifying existence. Soon afterward, Zhang Xiaolin formally announced the disbandment of the coalition army. Everyone was to return to their respective homes. The 5 great sects would convene an emergency council and dispatch their strongest forces to confront the Purple Moon Empire directly, ensuring the destruction of these so-called treacherous rebels. The crowd dispersed one after another, each person weighed down by their own thoughts. The Purple Moon Empire was simply too powerful. Many could not help but wonder, if even the 5 great sects ultimately failed to stop them, would submission be the only path left? At this moment, they were serving the 5 great sects. If the Purple Moon Empire eventually triumphed, would they suffer retribution when accounts were settled? Bah! In truth, whoever ruled the world had nothing to do with them. All they wanted was to live their own peaceful lives. Why care whether it was the 5 great sects who commanded reverence or the Purple Moon Empire that ascended the throne? Quite a few people decided to cast aside worldly affairs altogether. Let the powers struggle as they pleased. They would not interfere. When the final victor emerged, they would simply go and pay their respects. The Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing returned to the academy. Their task was to continue recruiting talented individuals and laying the foundation for the eventual founding of a nation. Ling Han, however, decided to journey toward the Purple Moon Empire. There were many questions he needed answered, and only Ma Duobao could provide them. At his side remained Zhu Xuan-er and Hu Niu. The three traveled lightly, setting their course toward the territories of the Purple Moon Empire. Ordinary border defenses naturally posed no obstacle to spiritual infant-tier experts. Moreover, Ling Han possessed the Black Tower. So long as he avoided the imperial palace itself, he could enter and leave with ease. After 3 days of travel, they had already penetrated deep into the empire's territory, yet the imperial city still lay roughly 20 days away. At such times, the golden ship proved exceedingly useful. It carried them swiftly across the skies. Ling Han and Zhu Xuan merely needed to alternate control of the vessel each day. Hong. On the 5th day, a sudden sense of danger flashed through Ling Han's heart like lightning. Without hesitation, he seized Zhu Xuan-er and Hu Niu, instantly flashing into the Black Tower. In that very moment, the golden ship exploded into countless fragments, shattered to pieces that scattered through the air. Ling Han's figure reappeared outside, his gaze lifting toward the heavens. There, suspended in the sky, stood a slender, middle-aged man. His right hand remained extended, the aura of power still lingering around it. Clearly, he was the one who had launched the attack just now. Hu Jianyi, sect master of the Wind Moon sect.